Alrighty, folks, you've likely heard me talk about being in growth mode or chill mode. Better way of saying that probably is, are you in growth mode or maintenance mode? Again, these are all things that you will think about at some point in your journey as a real estate investor. And I couldn't think of anybody better to have this conversation with than Coach Carson, author of The Small and Mighty Investor, someone who speaks our language. How you doing, buddy?
Doing well, Michael. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. Why don't you give us your take on growth mode and maintenance mode, kind of just basic definitions. We'll start there, and then we'll talk about how people look at them, and maybe they look at them incorrectly.
Right. Yeah, I think about growth mode is when you're acquiring properties. So this is when you're making offers, you're generating leads, and in some respects, maybe you never stop doing that in the background, but it's really when you're in go mode, I got to buy some properties. And then there's this maintenance mode, which is like the other side of that mountain. When you've got the property, then it's almost like when you have Thanksgiving dinner and you have to digest your food, like after you eat this big meal, it's like you eat this big property and now you got to digest the thing and you got to like build it into your systems, add it to your bookkeeping, learn how the maintenance cycle is going to go on that property. And the reason this idea came up for me is that in my own community, I've been coaching people, and very often people feel like they're not doing any worthwhile work if they're not acquiring and growing their portfolio. And my feedback to them has been like, there's a lot of important work, maybe even more important work to be done in the maintenance mode. And it's kind of like when you work out, right? Like not only do you have to work out, you also have to recover if you actually want to be physically fit. And so to be a real estate fit, both of those are equally important. And in many cases, you buy a property, and like with the small and mighty investor, and people are buying one rental at a time, it might be 12 months before they buy the next
it could be
property.
24. You never know. Yeah.
So that maintenance mode could be a lot of the time you're spending. And so if you just say, I'm done with my work and don't do the maintenance work, I think that's a kind of false dichotomy there.
Yeah, I think that's because I could definitely see how someone might say, we've gone from growth mode to chill mode or maintenance mode. But what you don't realize is you're in really the work starts when you own it, right? The acquisition of a property is an event. It's an important event. It's a culmination of lots of work. I'm not trying to diminish it, but it's a single moment in time. But you're likely going to own this asset if you're, small and mighty or one rental. You're going to own it for decades. Mm-hmm. And owning a property for decades means you got to stay in tune with it, upgrade, maintenance, rent checks, tenant selections. There are a lot of moving pieces in maintenance mode. And I think a lot of people kind of incorrectly assume that, hey, we're going to maintenance mode and I don't need to be involved in a community. That is the wrong idea.
Right.
You need to be around other investors, other small and mighty or one rental fans that are still doing it because things change. Oh my God, insurance shock. Oh my God, short-term rentals out of nowhere. Oh no, short-term rentals are gone. Oh, I mean, there's so much that go on during the ownership, which again is a much longer duration. Maintenance mode may be less activities because you're not writing 17 offers and 4 follow-ups and, financial statements and all that nonsense. But ownership's important. That's where the real money's made, is in ownership.
Yeah. And I think it's also, if you think about your business as a business, the systems you build and the processes you build and the relationships you build, that forms like the body of your business. So the real estate is like, that's the asset. That's the thing that we use to collect rent. But like, I look at it as like on your journey as a rental investor, like the first property you buy, you've got a lot of work to do in the maintenance mode and the chill mode. Like you got systems to build, you got technology to add, you got, maintenance people to find. I mean, we could talk about all those things you do during maintenance mode. In the second property and the third property, it does get a little bit easier because once you build those systems and processes, then it's just tweaking them and working on them. But I really believe that like I've been in a kind of a chill mode with my rental property business for years now, but as I start looking at it, like I started driving around to my properties and kind of inspecting. I'm like, I start finding all these things that I've just kind of been ignoring. Like,
whoops, got to do that now.
That needs to be done. This needs to be done. And then I look at I've been doing like just looking back at reports of properties I already own. And there's a lot of tweaking of your portfolio you can do that you can optimize things. You could refinance, you could sell, might be able to, pay off one debt.
Equity.
Yeah. So there's just a lot of stuff. And it doesn't have to be a full-time job, but it does require your attention. And just like when you set goals and you work towards goals when you're buying properties, you can do the same thing with systems and checklists and processes. And it's really, I find it satisfying over time, because over time you build this confidence in that every time because you have so many systems and processes on the back end, it makes me even more confident when I go to buy a property because I know I can handle it. Like I know I
Yeah.
got this. Like this thing's ready to go.
Yeah, again, I think about that maintenance mode, and it's just so much longer than the acquisition mode. And it's really where you can wring out the cash flow. You can really de-risk your portfolio. You can really reposition equity, like you're talking about. Like, hey, I'm going to go lever up this property so I could pay off that property. So, worst comes to worst, that one goes back to the bank, but this one's mine, free and clear. There's just lots of different avenues that you can do. I think maintenance mode is really where you need to be involved in networks with other people that are there. That way you can bounce ideas off. You can look for the third rail or mistakes to make. And, again, as somebody, both of us run communities, that the community is what makes it. It's not you and I, it's the community of other members that make it, because you can bounce ideas off and grow new networks. And that's where the value is.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. Exchanging ideas on tenant screening criteria. That's one of those that you can kind of tweak. People
Yep.
will share those with each other and say, "Hey, here's my tenant screening criteria. What's yours? Oh, you're in California. Here's what we do there." So that, that's, you can exchange like checklists. You can exchange different processes. Like, hey, what do you do when a tenant turns over? What are the steps you have? Or do you have an inspection checklist that, for example, I have an inspection checklist that I give my handyman, I give my painter. Wouldn't that be valuable if somebody else
Yeah.
in your community, you could like borrow that and not have to reinvent that wheel? So those are the kinds of things that I think are really helpful when you're in that mode.
Love that. Love that. Again, folks, one of the things you learn about real estate investing and frankly building wealth is it is a long-term game, right? We talk about the 3 steps, third step's always 10 years in the making. And if you own them 10, 20, 30 years, that's really where you can get wealthy. Any closing thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, I have kind of a random idea, but I just read a biography. I think I told you last time we talked about Sam Walton from Walmart.
Yep.
And this brings to mind, like, a lot of people think about like entrepreneurs when they're out there opening stores. And he talked about how like he was a really good advertiser, but he said he thought the success of Walmart, and I think a lot of companies like that, and we can take ideas from that, is in how well you do the details behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Like he was just like a fanatical detail guy. Like, for example, he got up every Saturday morning. He went to his meetings. He had his numbers. Like he knew, he had these like handwritten charts of the sales, expenses, inventory turnover at every single store. I mean, for years and years and years, like he knew the numbers at every single store. And my thought is like, that's the example of someone who is like obsessive about the operations, the details. And for us as rental investors, if you don't know like the numbers and the systems and the processes on every single rental property, you got some room to go. Like
you got some explaining to do.
There's some improvement you can make. And so that would be my challenge to people. It's just like, just like you work hard on growing your business, challenge yourself to be like that. Like like the back of your hand, the operations, the systems, the numbers of your business. I challenge you to do that, because when you do, your confidence level and also the improvements and the skill, the type of improvements you make to your overall portfolio are really, really amazing.
Love that. Chad, you're amazing. Folks, go to Amazon right now. Get Small and Mighty Investor. Also, if you have the book, leave the guy a 5-star book review. We always like to get those book reviews, man. You're amazing, Chad. Take care.
Thanks, Michael.